Magnus, it's lovely to see you. Thank you very much for joining me.
It's an honor and lovely to see you too, Maria.
You're so polite. I love it. I love it. So listen, I want to dive straight in and understand, how did you first become interested in trend spotting and the future? What got you into that area?
Well, I'm the grandson of a Pentecostal preacher here in Sweden, and he was one of the youngest evangelists ever. And he grew into becoming a futurist of sorts. I know he preached the virtues of eating more greens in the 50s, of planting more trees to avoid desertification in the 60s. He talked about the electrical car in the 70s. So part of it is probably the genes and my upbringing. But personally, I was always interested in ideas and storytelling. I had a love of stagecraft. So from a very early age, I sought out everything from theater to wannabe pop stardom, although it did not materialize. I sought out ideas wherever I could find them: magazines, books, movies. I went to film school in Hollywood. I went to business school, journalism school, film school. All of it was a bit of a failure, to be frank. And I think out of those failures grew my career as a trend spotter and futurologist sometime in the early 2000s. And I normally say that we become in life what we do not fail at.
I love that. I'm going to quote you on that. I think it's really good. So I could become lots of things, really, but I have also failed at lots of things. Yes, I like that. But what inspired you to go deep and become an expert?
Oh, I'm always cautious with the word expert. I find that the more I learn, the less I know. But I think to go deep, I guess it grew in conjuncture with my audience and my market and my clients. When I started this out, it was very much iterative and experimental. An old boss had told me, you cannot make money off of public speaking, and I believed him. So I started to write reports and books and do innovation workshops, and chiseled out of that became the products for which I'm known, and the talks that I give. I've never really gone deep into a specific question, and I'm kind of glad I haven't, because they tend to change. Right now, we live very much in a world dominated by things like AI and deep learning and political turbulence. 10 years ago, it was all about austerity and globalization. 10 years before that, it was .com. So I tried to stay a little bit on the surface and be aware of everything. I guess as an expert, or maybe I'm the opposite of an expert, an impert.
An impert. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's good. You're giving me a lot of great new stuff here. But tell me, I mean, in your work, you've met lots of people, you've talked to lots of people, you do a lot of traveling. Who's the most inspiring person you've met, would you say?
Oh, well, my spontaneous answer would be myself hungover, but that's too embarrassing. Sorry. The people who have really inspired me, I used to go a lot to the TED conference back when it was in Monterey, California, where you'd find yourself in a queue with Peter Gabriel, Glenn Close, and all kinds of mavens, mavericks, and innovators. So that was spoon-fed inspirational characters back there. But pulling back a little bit, my father is an entrepreneur with a very mixed track record. And the fact and the way that he dealt with the downturns and the failures, of which he's had many and quite disastrously so, but the way he's bounced back from that, he has a saying that if you swim long enough in whipped cream, it becomes solid enough for you to climb out of the bowl, which is a very inspirational quote for me and one I carry dear to heart. I think also somebody who's truly inspired me is my wife, Vesna, who came as a refugee of war from Bosnia-Herzegovina from Sweden at age 16, came as a refugee, suffered all the plight that refugees still suffer to this day, but again was able to transform that. She has an engineering degree. She's a CTO of a hot startup now. She learned Swedish in a way that you'd never think she was from anywhere else. I guess but both she and my father encompass us is that way of soldiering on, of bouncing back, of turning disadvantage into advantage, which I truly admire and is inspired by.
That's great. I love that. Thank you. Tell me, you've said that there's something wrong with the way we think about the future and talk about the future today. Can you expand on that for us? What is wrong with the way we think about it?
Well, not just today, but in general, we tend to be very one-dimensional. So we either gravitate between optimism and pessimism on a famous pendulum swing. 15 years ago, we were in radical optimistic times, as we were same as the mid-90s. Right around the turn of the millennia, we were deeply gloomy, Y2K, and right around Lehman Brothers. And I think today, again, 2019, 2020, people are in very dystopian times. And that's a very one-dimensional way of thinking. I'm inspired by what my great inspirator, the late Hans Rosling, one of the most famous Swedes, not just as a speaker, but as a thinker. And he said, don't be an optimist or a pessimist, be a possibilist. Believe and study the art of the possible. And that's both good and bad. But to me, that's a more multidimensional way. The second thing is, of course, we have a very headline-driven way of thinking about the future. Robots stealing our jobs, Donald Trump wreaking havoc, or some other political character wreaking havoc, which is dramatic and it's captivating. But again, it misses so many more abstract, slower stories that do not make for nice headlines. And it's been said many times by the likes of Steven Pinker that the real headline should have been 30,000 people lifted out of poverty, and it should have been that every day for the last 30 years. So that's another way. Thirdly, we believe always in minus futures. We only look at what's being taken away from us, whether it's clean environment or jobs or money. We are very bad at thinking about plus futures. What are some things we've never heard about that might come along and change our lives for the better? So I always have this mental exercise. Imagine if you went back in time a couple of hundred years and you told someone, I'm from the future, let me tell you about it. They're going to cut down all these trees and build a city. And the person would have gone, oh my God, they're going to cut down the trees, the forest, oh my God. But we will also have an iPhone. And they would have no idea what you were talking about. And had you gone back far enough, you'd probably be burned on the stake as a witch. Because of course, an iPhone is a complex tool built upon layers and layers of innovations. And that's a plus future for me. Study the iPhone, not the felled tree.
I like that. I like that. You also say that it's really important to think about the small ideas, that small ideas matter. In fact, you wrote an entire book about it and you called it Minifesto. Why are small ideas so important? Can you give me also an example maybe of a small idea that has had a big impact?
Sure. Well, first of all, I saw that the future was often fed to us top down by some kind of leader of experts saying, this is the future. It's coming for you. Behold, repent. And that's been very much a leadership strategy for hundreds of years, to tell people what's coming. And I studied actual innovations and saw that quite the opposite. They were not based on these grand top-down narratives. They were based on small moments of tinkering and experimentation. So you have somebody like John Walker, who was a chemist by day. Oh no, sorry, he was a pharmacist by day and a dabbling chemist at night. And he used to just like to mix ingredients together. And one time the ingredients solidified, so his spoon stuck to the ingredients. And as he tried to scrape the sticky ingredients off, it caught fire. And he inadvertently invented a safety match. And I always like to think, I mean, imagine if you heard somebody today mixing explosive chemicals in their apartment, you'd arrest them, you'd call them, and you'd be afraid it was ISIS or Al-Qaeda. So that to me is a manifesto. The invention of graphene, which promises to be one of the most revolutionary materials ever invented, came from Friday night fun activities at the university in Manchester. You can look at the invention of the Whopper, which is a bit more trivial, the hamburger, But it came because the founder of Burger King, which was then called Insta Burger King, had a divine burger in Jacksonville, Florida, drove home, and it was the mid-50s, so you could still drink and drive. He got a bit drunk driving, and he started to think about how he could copy this divine burger to his own restaurant. And then the name just appeared in his stupor while foolishly driving, Whopper. And I think those moments give us a respect for out of the tiniest threads, you can weave the biggest tapestries. Every journey starts with a single step and so on. And that voice was needed in these times of grand narratives, I thought.
Okay, that's good. And so for you, the future is a verb, isn't it? Can you explain that to me as well?
Sure. Well, the future is a place, it's a thing. Very often it's positioned as a kind of date, 2025, or sometimes we see it as a Californian suburb from where we could just copy stuff, and that's the future. I try to urge people to think of it as a verb, to future. We need to future. You and I need the future. That means having this open-minded, experimental approach to life and business and relationship. It means looking at other stories, not just the usual stories, looking in different places, traveling to different places where everybody else goes. That to me is what it means to future. It's seeking out your inner creative spark, being different, being contrarian, realizing that this too shall pass and tomorrow needs a different solution that we might not be aware of yet. So I always urge my audiences to let's go futuring.
Let's go futuring. Excellent. And are you optimistic yourself about the future? What are you excited about for the future?
Short-term future, I'm excited for my son's American football practice in about half an hour. And we must never forget that, the small moments and the close future. But long-term, what excites me most right now is that we have so many solutions at hand to the problems that are presented as big and unsolvable. Climate change earlier this summer. Scientists proposition that we need only plant 1 trillion trees. Now that sounds like a lot. It is a lot. Planting trees will capture carbon like never before. It's what my grandfather saw in the 1960s. Look at the promise of biotech and bioluminescence, fluorescent deep sea plankton and algae. We can take those fluorescent things and put it into building materials and save electricity. We could put it into our finger and have our own portable, always on reading lamp. We can use our husband or wife as a bed lamp if we want to. We have so many solutions at hand. And for every new person being born, a new creative machine called a brain is born. That to me is a cause for deep possibilism, bordering on optimism. Now, whenever in history people have said we stand on the threshold of something fantastic, a war is broken out. Which is why in the time we live in right now, when everybody says we stand on the verge of just more hardship and terrible times, I feel a flickering light of hope within me.
That's really encouraging. Thank you very much. We need to hear that at the moment, I think. So Magnus, tell me about your speaking. How did you become a speaker?
Again, from age 8, when I first saw the rock band Kiss in a magazine, I found I want to do that. I want to be on a stage to impress, to show off, to inspire, to be larger than life. And for many years, I took a badminton racket and pushed play on a cassette deck and did mini shows for my parents, which were probably not very good. I did a lot of theater in school and also university. I went to film school. I always sought the limelight. So I guess I come a little bit out of, not show business, but at least failed show business. I had a rock band in my mid-20s, and if I was lucky, 3 people and a dog would show up to the gig, and you'd be paid half a keg of beer. So there was always that in me, but I always wanted to be more than a speaker. I always wanted to put on a show and a performance, which is why to this date, I use many different media. I use song. I might do for no particular reason, a dance step or two. I enjoy feeling the room with the audience. And to me, those things are not about me. And I think it's when I realized that I got good as a speaker. I see what I do as collectively exploring ideas. I propose, and the audience either rejects or accepts. And I always say that laughter is the sound of a mind opening. So I know I can see in people's eyes or hear it if they chuckle that I'm onto something here. I'm having a different way of seeing this. And it's a difficult journey. It's a journey I'm still on. I find every speech I give to be equally difficult. But because I try to change it and follow the journey, and where are we at right now in the world? But it's one that has become part of my identity, and I can see a soft red thread going back in life as to this is what I've always done.
And I've seen you, and it's true. You do collectively bring the audience together. It's wonderful. So tell me, if I were to put you in a time machine, which is a lovely thing to do with somebody who looks to the future, I'm going to take you back, and knowing what you know now, and with the experience that you have with your speaking, what advice would you give to young Magnus who's first started giving his business speeches? What would you say to yourself?
Oh God, what a great, difficult question. Here's what I would do, depending on when I'd meet young Magnus. But this troubled younger soul that I had, I would first of all give him a long hug, because we all need that, no matter which age we're at. And then I would just tell him, you know what? Nobody will remember the failures. Nobody will. You will beat yourself up about them. You will curse the earth and yourself and feel like a failure, like a fraud, like an ugly person. But trust me, you're not. And the beauty of the speaking industry is that when you do something really good, it resonates for people for years. If you do something really bad because of a mistake or a misunderstanding, people instantly forget it. It's like that flashing light in the Men in Black films. So that's what I would tell the young me. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be hard. Nobody remembers the failures but you. So forget them, you too.
Thank you, Magnus. That's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.